Hello, everyone. Welcome. Another Friday, another episode of Why Are We Bullish? We got a killer panel tonight. We got a returning guest and a couple brand newbies. First time on WOB. So very excited to have them all. It's going to be a blast. I've got a beverage going, but I'm put to shame by Joey, who has 3 on the sidelines ready, and they're all tall boys. So we're going to get this thing rolling. Of course, this is live. Anything can happen. So I defer to my friend Bill here.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
If you have not already, please do like, subscribe, share, all those things help this content get in front of more eyeballs. I am Ben with the BTC Sessions. This is your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
Before we bring in our guests, let's take a look at where we are in the market right now. Just eked over 20,000, but it's been well, not that much of a volatile day, to be honest. But in the context of sideways chop that lasts forever, that happens in these bear markets, it's been a little bit up and down here. But a single US dollar at the time of this video will pick you up 5,003 sats. 91.14% of all Bitcoin have been mined. And in terms of fees, next block, it's looking like 19 sats per byte. If you're willing to wait a little bit, somewhere between 5 and 11 sats per byte should do you. Quick shout out to sponsors of the show, CoinKite. These guys just have the best in Bitcoin hardware. I love my Cold Card Mark IV. It's all air gapped, never plug it into anything internet connected. I love the air gapping via the SD card. It just feels badass when you plug it into a 9-volt battery and it still works. Again, they've got like all of the great features in this thing. You can actually derive 10,000 separate wallets using a BIP 84, I think is the one. Either way, just a separate accounting system, and you can pretty much do infinite things with this thing. Like, if you are curious, go into my Cold Card deep dive. That thing is an absolute beast. It clocks in at around 2 hours. This is nothing short of versatile. But these guys have all the great stuff. The open dimes, I've been leaving them around different cities for scavenger hunts. The block clock, obviously that's a staple of any Bitcoiner's bookshelf. They got the cold power, the seed plates, they've got it all. So go check them out, coinkite.com, and you can use code BTC Sessions for 5% off everything in the store, or just click the link down below. Up next, if you're in Canada, easy way to stack sats is Shakepay.com. E-transfers in and out, no deposit or withdrawal fees. There's a thin spread, and if you click the link down below to sign up and purchase your first $100 worth of Bitcoin, they'll give you $30 for free. You get the same deal when you use your referral link with friends and family and whoever you see fit, and they go and buy their first $100. And on top of that, you can shake your phone every single day for free sats. They got sats back Visa card. They got all kinds of stuff over there to help you stack sats. So check them out, shakepay.com. Link is down below. LEDN.io. You can use your Bitcoin for a ton of different services. These guys have been very useful for me whenever I'm in a cash flow situation where I need to get my hands on dollars, but I don't want to necessarily sell that Bitcoin because, taxable events and worried about having to buy back in at a higher price. Here, I can deposit Bitcoin, get a loan of dollars to my bank account within 24 hours, pay back those dollars, get back the same amount of Bitcoin. They also have savings accounts for Bitcoin and USDC with quarterly third-party audits, which you can cryptographically verify that your deposits were part of the audit. So you're not getting jerked around Celsius style. They also have their B2X offering. They have Bitcoin-backed mortgages rolling out across Canada and in select US states. So check them out, start.ledn.io/BTC Sessions. Couple last ones here. Bitrefill helps me a ton living on Bitcoin. I can pick up all of the gift cards that I want using Bitcoin, both on-chain and via the Lightning Network. You earn sats back as you shop, more sats back for the referral program. You can also top up your phone, Lightning channels, and if you're in the US, you can pay bills and get on the Bitcoin standard. So check out bitrefill.com. And finally, if you're backing up any important Bitcoin wallet, get it in solid steel. Paper doesn't cut it. You don't want to have to be worrying about fire damage or water damage or just discarding a piece of paper in your office. Getting into solid steel gives you that peace of mind. So this is how I back up my important wallets: BillFodl, privacypros.io/BTC sessions, and you can get yourself a little deal there. Without further ado, though, I think it's time for me to stop rambling and bring in who you guys came here to see, the guests for today. So we got Mark, we got Chris, we got Joey. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you. I think it's in order that we do a quick round of intros for anybody unfamiliar. So I'll simply ask, who are you and what do you do? And I'll pass it to Mark first.
Yeah, hey everybody. Thanks, Ben, so much. So to be here. Chris, Joey, what's up? Yeah, Mark Goodwin out in the Bay Area. I work on the print magazine for Bitcoin Magazine. Do writing and editing there. And yeah, I'm fucking stoked to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Glad to have you. Joey, you're returning. Let people know who you are if they didn't see you last time.
Ben, happy to be here, man. Thanks for the invite as always. And gentlemen, looking forward to tonight. My name is Joey, co-host of the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. We run Monday streams, Wednesday streams, and whenever we feel like it streams. Hope to see you there. And as always, looking forward to some Bitcoin discussion.
Awesome. Well, dude, glad to have you back. Last time I was remote. Now I'm back in my my home. I've been in and out of town a lot lately, so it feels nice to be in the office for a change. But we'll toss it over to Chris here. Dude, I'm glad to have you on. I'm sure we'll get into some of the topics that drew me to ask you to come to the show, but let people know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, man. So first of all, I like to introduce myself as a husband and father first. Those are the two roles that definitely mean the most to me. It's kind of what's driven me to this most recent path that I'm on. I just left the sick care system, as I like to call it, as a physical therapist, and don't plan on going back. I'm trying to build something different on my own right now, trying to empower guys to take back control of their health, take back control of their responsibilities as dads and as husbands, and just trying to build this thing from the ground up and try to motivate as many guys as I can.
Awesome. Well, dude, I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad to have all of you. This is before I get in, there's something in the chat that has to be addressed. Joey, can you confirm or deny that you bleached your shirt?
I didn't. Listen, I don't wear this shirt that often. I'm going to give you a preview here of the topic I'll be discussing tonight. I got a nice tree here. Sorry, let me work on this. And on the back of the shirt, on the back of the shirt.
Big tree energy. Great. I love it.
We got lots to talk about, boys. Lots to talk about.
Awesome. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for being here. Everybody that's watching, if you're here for the first time, maybe you're unfamiliar, this is Why Are We Bullish? Really simple, chill show. The whole premise is we go by the 3 R's. First, somebody's going to drop a reason why they are bullish. That can be any topic that you see fit, whatever's top of mind. Second, all together, we're going to riff on that reason, thoughts, questions, whatever it may be. And then third, we're going to rotate until all of us get a turn. Simple and sweet. And I'm going to get us rolling today. So I'm going to chat a little bit about my reason for being bullish. And my reason for being bullish is that I found that being in Bitcoin has actually piqued my curiosity in other facets of life and has caused me to learn about lots of different tangential topics and areas of expertise. So the reason this is top of mind for me right now is some of the stuff that I've had to be messing around with just even today and the past week or so. In and around, I like playing with different nodes and trying out different software and everything like that, running Bitcoin nodes. And I'm always doing tutorials around that kind of stuff. But some of it can get interesting if it's a little bit more of a hands-on experience. So one of the things that I've now started to attempt to learn about is soldering. So I picked up a soldering iron. I had no idea what I was doing. I'll say that my first time out, I left a little bit to be desired. It wasn't the best job I've ever done, but it seems to be kind of working. I'm going to have to play around a little bit, but nonetheless, I'm trying to affix a screen to my Raspberry Pi, my Raspberry Blitz, which is a Bitcoin and Lightning node. So I've been tinkering around with that. And so then I've been trying to figure out how to wire this thing to the Raspberry Pi board with all of these wires that I've got put in after I soldered things together, pins. And, you know, I've been looking at all these different pinout diagrams, trying to figure out just how to even do this stuff, which I'm going in blind, right? Like I haven't really had to deal with a lot of this stuff previously. But I did get some stuff going. I got my Raspberry Pi up.
Woo! Bullish. Let's go.
Looks sick.
Seems to be going. It seems to be working. And then there it is with the enclosure actually put in there, and it seems to be running just fine. I haven't opened any lightning channels or anything yet, but it's working. The screen is up. Everything is looking nice. The screen is just kind of sitting there. I haven't been able to affix it with anything. I'm going to have to like figure out some adhesive or something, but it does stay put. And then I got curious because on Umbrel, which is another Node implementation, you can download different apps. And one of them is called Tailscale. What Tailscale is it allows you to remotely access your node without having to have like Tor or anything like that. It basically creates like a virtual, like a VPN that easily connects to whatever device you're trying to connect to just through your regular browser. It creates its own closed network. So on Umbrel, it's like you just download the app and then you log into it, and that's pretty much it. But on the Raspberry Pi, it's not an option to download that. So I was like, I tossed it out there on Twitter. I was like, how do I do this? And it's basically you got to go into command line, which again, another thing that I've like just kind of barely scratched the surface of, but now I'm starting to get a bit more comfortable. And lo and behold, I figured it out. And like just literally moments before we came on here, I got Tailscale set up on my phone, and then I linked it with the command line to my Raspberry Blitz node. So now I can access it remotely from anywhere with the click of a button, which is incredible. And then up on the docket next, Alpha Zeta is a guy, and he put together this cool like screen that you can get for the front of your Raspberry Pi, like for the what does it look like? For this screen here, and it reads out a lot of different information and you know, any fees that you may have collected from lightning channels and forwarded payments and all that kind of stuff, and price information. Anyways, my next goal is to learn how to use the command line and actually do all of this crap and get it installed. So we'll see how that goes. But the long and the short of it is that being in Bitcoin is forcing me to learn new skills and try new things that I probably wouldn't have dabbled in whatsoever. And like, it's not exclusively just in tech related fields. And I'm sure we'll get into this probably with Chris later on as well. But even some of the ethos of Bitcoin, it sends you down different rabbit holes around values or around proper nutrition and health. And there's all kinds of different things that kind of seep into your life through Bitcoin, in my opinion anyways, and I'm sure others can attest to it. But it just makes you generally curious about the way you used to live your life and about new things that you could try and tinker with. So that's my reason for being bullish. It's kind of obtuse. I don't know. It's a strange one, but I just wanted to open it up to you guys. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and the rabbit holes it leads you down, either in relation directly to Bitcoin or outside of Bitcoin? And also, does anybody run a Raspberry Blitz? So whoever wants to dive in.
Ben, the real question, I think this goes for like a bunch of stuff in Bitcoin, mining, the stuff you're doing with Raspberry Blitz and the nodes, all that kind of stuff. What would you say the minimum technical capability is or should be for a person who attempts that? Like you said, you had never done anything like that before. That was like your first time holding a soldering iron, like it's in the scrapbook now. Like, so like what is the minimum technical capability for someone who wants to try that? What do you think?
Well, so I mean, I had some prerequisites there in that I've used a Raspberry Pi before. you know, and I've done the basics of like, I'm going to take a Raspberry Pi and plug it in and like, you know, put an SD card and like flash in some software. That stuff that I'm talking about there, like the simplicity of, say, maybe piecing together and spinning up an Umbral node, that you don't really need technical prowess. You should know how to turn on and operate a computer. You should know how to put together Lego blocks. You know, it's not that difficult when you're spinning up something like an Umbral. I would argue that even, you know, the only reason that I dove into soldering is because I wanted it to look like this. But you can buy parts that just kind of snap together much easier and still have a screen going and everything. So yeah, the soldering iron, I did that to myself. But
that, I think that speaks to it though, you know, it's like there's a teacher element to Bitcoin that, like, you know, maybe you could argue comes downstream from, you know, like, you know, actually being able to own something, right? You know, but yeah, it's like, I think the technical skill, like it should be curiosity is really the prerequisite. And I really think there's, you know, with Ben's guides and all that, there's so much good material out there that you really can just do it with curiosity, really being the only prerequisite, which is like really cool. It's a very special thing in Bitcoin. I think to your point about like there's a lot of masteries like within Bitcoin. And I think it's like a two-way street where Bitcoin teaches you a lot about different masteries, but also you can get into Bitcoin via all of these different masteries. Like there are people that will probably get into Bitcoin because they love tinkering and building little computers. And maybe that is the thing that will get them in. It's kind of neat. It works both ways, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting because especially in the context of running a node, a lot of people misinterpret kind of the sequence of events there. Oh, I need to learn a bunch of stuff so that I can then run a node. But in reality, the node is the learning tool.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the act of putting it together and then figuring out what you do with it. That is the learning process. So I would argue, like, if you're curious about it and you think it's kind of cool and you want to give it a try, then just start, right? Like just pick a project, whether it be Umbral or Raspberry Blitz or Start9 or Ronin Dojo or whatever your flavor is, and just go for it. Just grab some parts, or if you're really unsure, grab a plug and play box and then just start, because again, the experience of just having the node there and playing with it, that's the learning experience there. You don't need a lot of prerequisite for that.
Totally. Yeah. I just want to run with that a little bit. When you talked about that, what spoke to me is the idea of action over continuing to overanalyze. And that leads to just stagnation, and you're just spinning your wheels. And that's what I've found in my experience is you don't have to have anything figured out. You just have to consistently act. And if you just keep showing up, it's going to lead you to some level of growth, whether that's a technical skill or communication or whatever it is. And it's honestly something I try to live my life by now, because I've seen so much progress that unfortunately we have. I'll go down a rabbit hole here right away. With an education system that makes us hate learning, so it crushes curiosity, is you have to relearn the process of enjoying learning again. And the best way you can do that is by finding things that you're interested in, and then just exploring them relentlessly, because they'll kind of lead you from one thing to the next. It's just been what I've found over the last couple of years after, just pounding my head against the wall for way too long.
Yeah, that's
so true, man. Like I never really thought about that, Chris. Like remembering how to enjoy learning. You know, when you're a kid, the wonders of the world are sort of, you know, neat to you, and it truly is trained out of you, that enjoyment for picking up a new skill or picking up a new set of ideas, and you have to relearn that. Ben, I know you know this as a content guy. You know, I didn't know anything about how to like do video or audio editing. None of that shit is native to me at all. And you know, you learn whether it's that or to your point, Chris, you know, communication skills. Can you speak eloquently and summarize an idea in a way that's digestible for someone who doesn't have the maybe technical background you do. Or Ben, you've been doing that for a long time. Your videos are really the thing that everyone looks to when they're trying to do something new for the first time in Bitcoin. So it's unfortunate that we've made it to this point. But I think one thing about Bitcoin that's different from other ecosystems is in Bitcoin, there's no crab bucket. When you're trying to learn something and better yourself, there's no one dragging you back down. There's so many more people trying to help you get to where you want to go. And as long as you show up in earnest, attrition is your friend over a long enough period of time. 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, there's much more of an abundance mindset, versus everybody feeling like they've got to steal their piece of the pie. And I think that's what's been beautiful for me to see is just so many people who are trying to level up and then pull people alongside of them rather than continuing to fight amongst themselves where nobody's really benefiting at that point.
Yeah.
And there's also just a mathematical sort of element to learning that the further along you get, it's sort of less enjoyable because like the steps of improvement get smaller and smaller. Like your first week of learning a new instrument, it's like, that's 50% of you're like halfway there, and then you spend the next like 10 years doing the next like 15, right? Yeah. And that's true in Bitcoin. And, I think some people get really jaded the further they get along into it. And, because, they didn't just like figure out what the difficulty adjustment is, they are like, oh man, I'm like analyzing fucking aluminum charts and shit. It's like, how the fuck did I get here? Which is funny.
Trading views the most screen time on your phone. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like, man, this used to mean something, what am I doing? No. And just like, I think it's, and the way to fight that, I think, is like by teaching and putting out those guides and doing the element, you sort of like cure that itch. You find the fun again and like seeing, new people figure out what the difficulty adjustment is, and like, that's the fucking shit. Yeah. So I really like that. And I love the self-responsibility kind of proponent of what you're talking about, Chris, I think is really awesome.
It's investing in yourself. Like, where else can
right.
Where else, you know what I mean? Like, where else can you get this kind of stuff? You certainly don't get it working for the man. You certainly don't get it, in many facets that we're told are the normal way to live your life, whether it's higher education or a job, 9 to 5, whatever. Investing in yourself is something that most of us, unfortunately, have to do in what's supposed to be our spare time. And that's a whole other element to this whole puzzle. That you have to come out of this, you have to remove yourself from this idea that your time is somehow spare. There is no spare time. You have to do something with all of your time, whether you waste it playing video games or spend it at the gym or spend it soldering or spend it doing whatever. There is no such thing as spare time. It's all time that's going to eventually, be lost. And so you damn well better spend it on something that's important to you and that betters you and makes you a happier person. And so why not do it this way? I have trouble figuring this out with people who don't spend their time in this manner, but I think in Bitcoin, there's enough people that are doing it and have been successful doing it, either from an economic standpoint or from a personal happiness standpoint, that there's really no excuse not to do it once you make it in this space.
What do you guys think is the primary reason that people stop being curious? Like what takes that natural curiosity and that willingness and excitedness to learn new things and crushes it?
I think it's lack of self-belief.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think. It sucks the life out of us, and we get into the rat race of life, and we're taught one skill, and we think that's the only skill that we can use to create a living. And anything outside of that, we're breaching out of our comfort zone, and everybody around us is screaming at us to tell us to stay in our comfort zone. And that's what I've found, is it's all mindset, self-belief, and lack thereof that keeps people in their own prison system. And once you can consistently lean into just like beating yourself through that wall, there's just no stopping you. But it takes a long time to be able to convince yourself to do that. That's just my 2 cents, but
totally. And then there's some like runaway perverse incentives in there too, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about incentives as Bitcoiners? Like how long we got, Ben? We only got a couple hours, I guess. Maybe not. Best not to go through that right now.
It's
We'll
called
save that for
game
another
theory.
time.
It's called game theory. How much time we got? That's why I'm bullish. Game theory.
Well, let's do let's I guess we can kind of wrap this here, but I mean I guess in closing, Bitcoin has made me inherently more curious about going down paths of learning that I previously would never have thought that I would either even try or be able to grasp. So yeah, I think it's kind of a unique thing, and I think again the ethos that comes with being a Bitcoiner, and I shouldn't like paint in broad strokes, but I've seen a lot of this with Bitcoiners where they get a better handle on one aspect of their lives, and then they start thinking about the idea of low time preference and how can I better allocate the only thing more scarce than Bitcoin, which is my time. And I think that's an interesting way to go.
Time is the only commodity. Like,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
For sure.
exactly.
I
gotta
give it. You should have
Mark, does Bitcoin Magazine have a budget to put that on a shirt that I can buy and shrink and bleach or no?
Yeah, I don't know what your starch budget is, but we could probably work something out, get you set up. Yeah, no doubt, for sure.
Awesome. All right, well, let's do a rotation here. Before we do, I got to give a shout out to totally not the IRS for the $2 donation. I'm definitely not going to claim that. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Yeah, and there's everybody in the chat, of course. Keep the comments coming. I'll start pulling up more now that it's not specifically my topic. But yeah, we're gonna do a little rotation here. So I'm gonna jump to Mark next, and I'm just gonna ask you, man, why are you bullish? What's exciting to you right now?
Yeah, for sure. Just to be clear on the rundown, I should save a couple reasons, right? I shouldn't just like go all out right now.
You can go all out because we're just gonna riff on your thing, and then we'll rotate to the
cool.
next person once we get through these topics.
I mean, it's all really the same reason, you know. I didn't know if I had to like kind of stretch out that ammunition a little bit, but well, I'll be honest, guys. Like, I've been kind of bearish for a bit. Like, I just from macro standpoint, man. It's like I know, and trust me, I know. Well, it's a setup. And it's just everything has just felt so shitty and uncertain and fucked up. I can swear, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
You
okay, cool.
Say whatever the fuck you want.
Sweet. It's just been really fucked for a bit, and so I haven't really been super confident in the market. And like when I saw, we went up to like 25K, and I saw everyone kind of getting super bullish. I was like, this is a pretty. I think this is going to end badly. I can kind of see that, and to me that was sort of like okay. And then we basically went down to 20K. That's like 20% flat, it's like the idea that then everybody in the world just turned bearish all at the same time at 20K to me is like, okay, like all the very same people that were like bull crazy at 25 are now like doom posting about like breaking 10K and all this shit, which like, I'm not saying is not possible. Like, of course, anything's possible. It's Bitcoin, but like, I don't know, you can kind of see the market sentiment, like the tide, like switch, like the narrative has really like switched. Whereas everybody was moon posting, a few weeks ago, really. So yeah, when I kind of see something like that, it's like, I think people are going to take that 20% if they're flat and close out some positions at 20K. I think we're going to chill here. I think I could totally see a nice short squeeze here. Yeah, I'm kind of bullish in this like contrarian sense where I've been so cautiously bearish for, I don't know, like half a year now, maybe more. Yeah. And now everyone is super bearish. And that to me is like a sign that, cause like, hey, the reasons why I'm so bearish is because everything's so fucked up. But it's like Bitcoin is like, it's pretty much built exactly for this moment. It's just also the moment has to play out and we have to have a bleh. And, we had it in 2020, we had that big, everything went down all at once. And I still think we could have that moment again, which is why I don't think anyone should really go YOLO crazy yet, as I think that very well we could have that 2020 liquidation event coming up. But also it's like, what's next? And to me, it's like the dollar is destroying every currency, like, but also the dollar has a lot of issues to deal with, and we can't just keep kicking this down the road. I think we are going to have to print. I think our debt service is too much, and you know, I think it might be, you know, maybe Q1, but I really see Bitcoin being a very important tool, you know, in the macro environment moving forward, like just what we're seeing with energy prices and monetary debasement. It's just like, that's what Bitcoin's for, you know? And, you know, Bitcoin has a lot of things to deal with and build and get there to be able to meet that need. There's a lot of work to do for sure. And I don't think, you know, let's not take too many things for granted, but also this is exactly what Bitcoin's for. You know, let's let it do its thing. And, you know, boom bust cycles are totally a natural thing in markets and nature and anything. And, you know, I think this is just a very natural part. Like, we just saw how much sickness was in the Bitcoin market and how much just got flushed the fuck out. It's like, that's good. I know it sucks. We're all poor. It sucks. But like, so bullish and so good to just rid all of this shit and get back to teaching and kind of less of this, like, you know, it's a great tool. And I'm bullish. I'm bullish for that, you know?
I mean, as long as you have low enough time preference, then this is just a momentary blip.
Opportunity.
Right? It's like still being upset about the 2018 bear market. Right? Oh, that was so bad. I was so upset. That was such a rough
That's my favorite time of Bitcoin. That's when I learned the most about Bitcoin, because I was like, what did I just do? Like, how did I get here? You know, not in a bad way. I 2017 was good to me, but just like, what did we all just experience, you know? And then I like learned what Bitcoin really was, you know, and maybe that was downstream because of what happened in 2017. Like, there was an investment that came in from an appreciation, right? But anyway, I mean, yeah, you're totally right. That's a great way to put it.
All the good stuff gets built in bear markets, right? Like, everybody gets all excited during the bull markets and they start tossing money around, mostly irresponsibly. And then luckily some people have the presence of mind to, oh, you know, maybe we should start putting money into something that's actually sound, that's maybe this person has something that's worthwhile to build rather than just like a dyno or you know, some sort of like casino or whatever it may be. And you see the projects that have presence of mind to go, okay, this isn't going to last forever. You know, there's going to be another bear market and we need to prep for that. We need to make sure that we're ready, that we don't overextend ourselves, and that we have time to keep our heads down and build when everybody thinks everything's dead again. And that's where we're seeing people working on important things, and the world at large is like totally oblivious, right? Like, all they see is like whatever the ticker's at, and they have no clue, like, oh, hey, there's just, you know, Ross Stevens just announced a Lightning accelerator, and he's going to be like flying in Lightning devs from all over the world and putting together teams so that they can build out layer 2 infrastructure. Like, no normies are aware of that, but they will see the results of it come around to the next bull cycle. Like, wow, look at all the cool shit you can do with Bitcoin. Look, it's fast and it's cheap, and there's all these apps and these different things that I can use with it. And it's actually incredibly useful, much better than I thought it was a few years ago. And that's going to continue to play out, just like scaling did, you know, from 2017, 2018 to now. You know, Lightning was to the normie wasn't even a twinkle in their eye. And now a lot of people are interacting with Lightning on a regular basis. So I think, it's a unique time. Cherish these bear markets. But I'll let Joey or Chris jump in here.
Yeah, all I was going to say is, I'll be honest, I probably have the most trivial background when it comes to Bitcoin of anybody you've maybe ever had on here. But with that all said, it definitely, I agree with you. I think at this point, it's a matter of, it's a when, not if situation. And I'll be kind of interested to get Joey's perspective on a couple of things too when he gets into ESG, because there's a couple other areas like uranium that I feel very strongly in as well, that it's like you're just waiting, you know, and you just get positioned early on. And if you stop looking at it from an investment standpoint and you start looking at it as like it's money. So if I'm just and you're not valuing it in dollars anymore, and you're trying to just accumulate in an appropriate manner, of course, then all of these downturns just don't matter. I think most people would just be better off removing the emotion altogether and just turning it off, not paying attention to what the number says, and check back on it in 5 years. And they would be just a lot less stressed and a lot better served. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to like the specifics that you guys, got into, I'm excited to continue to get educated on all this stuff. But I think it's just a matter of removing emotion and just being consistent with the discipline of the strategies you have in place.
It's so true, man. Consistency is so key. I'll just note, first of all, I'll just say that I was not expecting to talk price on Why Are We Bullish. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk price on Why Are We Bullish, which is great. Even more surprised here I come from a Bitcoin magazine guy, but we'll talk about that another time, I guess.
That's hilarious.
It's fine. It's fine. I don't know how bullish you can be. I think I see at least is that a piano behind you there, Mark? Some kind of you haven't sold that yet, so that's still okay.
He's also curiously sitting on a chair, and we all know
very strange. Look at this chair. This is one of the worst chairs you could buy. This thing is barely hanging on, man. Okay, it's probably from the 70s or 80s.
Look at all those books you got. What are you talking about? I see you investing in yourself.
These are free. They're all free. It's all free. So the thing I would say about price and Bitcoin and the boom and bust. Boom and bust is a natural part of any market. Certainly a speculative market like Bitcoin is sort of currently seen as by most of the market participants, not necessarily Bitcoin market participants, but market participants more broadly. I don't think that's really up for debate. But
agreed.
This is the first bear market where there is zero doubt about the direction that central banks are going as far as debasement and printing. And to your point about whether or not they'll have to pivot in Q1 or Q2, I don't know a ton about this, but I know that the bond market is pricing in basically a Q1 either freeze or cut in America, which is sort of the stalwart central bank as far as the lighthouse that our central banks are looking at. And we'll talk a bit about Europe when it comes to my topic. But I think about all these things, and I think about the nature of the bear market in 2017-18 and just how, that bear market, you never know what causes these things, but there's at least some potential that the catalyst for that drop was the Coinbase Bcash Ninja launch. Like that's a different environment than we're in now. And, I'll talk about that a bit later as well, but I would just say to people who are worried about volatility, being worried about volatility is fine. I understand that people are risk averse. There's many studies that show that humans and other species are much more likely to protect what they have than they are to leave what they have and pursue something new or interesting. We've talked about that with Ben's topic. We're talking about it now with Mark's. It's not new or news to anyone. But I would just note that soon, I think, Mark, to your point, there will not be a choice. People will be they'll be too used to the pain of monetary debasement, of their salary not going up to match the price of goods and services, of governments pretending, certainly here where Ben and I are in Canada, sending out ill-informed tweet threads that are completely nuked. I know. Listen, don't hurt your neck leaning back that far, but it really is something when the Bank of Canada is sending these tweets out and getting completely obliterated, rubbed out. To their credit, they haven't stopped allowing replies yet, but that can't be far away. All this stuff together tells me that the sort of general populace, the normie, is waking up to these things. And soon there'll be two options, right? There'll be the riot in the street, which is the old way to do things to affect change. But there's also this other one now that's kind of creeping into modern society. I know in Canada, I think about, your sponsor, Ben, ours as well. Shakepay's got 1 million users, right? That's 1 in every 30 Canadians. If you cut that down to people who are between like 18 and 35 or 18 and 45, that's a pretty big percentage of the population. And I think that if I look at those numbers and the growth, as you guys both said, Chris and Mark both, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And positioning yourself early is important, and being able to weather these things in the meantime is important. But I really think we're going to be rewarded long term for our conviction.
Yeah. Can we for a moment just chat about that Bank of Canada thread? Because holy God, I don't know.
Unreal. Pull it up. You have it? Pull it up.
Yeah. Let me I gotta grab it here, because holy good God.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely the easiest era since I've been in Bitcoin to orange pill someone in that you can literally, you just like,
everywhere. Yeah.
it's just like, like what do you else do you fucking need to see for the love of God?
It's terrible stuff, man. The Bank of Canada here is terrible. Like, I'm not a big like politics guy, but I've been kind of half following the Peter Ducey, KJP, Karine Jean-Pierre back and forth at the White House press hours or whatever you guys call them over there. And like he grills her on stuff and she just has no idea. But people listening to this guy and going, oh yeah, you know what? Maybe he's right. Maybe inflation is here to stay. Maybe my wages should be going up. Maybe the money printing is continuing. All these things. Oh, here we go. Here's the thread. Fantastic from the Bank of Canada.
You asked us if we printed cash to finance the federal government. We didn't. Keep reading to learn how we supported the economy from the shock of the pandemic. Hashtag Canadian Econ. Ask the Bank of Canada. God. And then it goes basically saying we took various measures like buying bonds to support and ensure a strong and stable economy. We bought existing government bonds from banks on the open market. Why? This helped them unblock frozen markets at the start of the pandemic. It let households, companies, and governments access funding when they really needed it. Buying bonds also pulled down interest rates across the economy. This lowered the cost of borrowing to help Canadians get through the pandemic. We did not print cash to pay for the bonds. We bought the bonds with settlement balances, a kind of central bank reserve, not with bank notes. What's the difference? Settlement balances don't permanently add to the money supply. Unlike cash, we can remove those reserves from the system, and you can see that we've been doing just that.
Look at the chart. That's a chart crime. You know who's a good guy to ask about this is Crypto Voices, Matthew Mashinskis, who does the monetary base, the M2 update. He does it on Tales from the Crypt every quarter, but he also has a Twitter account, and I guarantee if you look in the replies, that fucking chart is there, and the thing spikes to high heaven. Okay. The thing goes from Lucifer to St. Peter in about one fucking month. And in that fucking month, the Bank of Canada is telling you that nothing fucking happened. Get real, man. It's not possible. Everyone knows that something is up. Everyone knows it. There you go.
Here's the month-end liabilities of the Bank of Canada starting in 2020. And it's just, I mean,
but guys, they didn't print bills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
they did it
literally, guys. We did not physically print money.
It's oh my God, like it's unbelievable that anyone buys this, and I think less and less people are buying it because it's impossible to ignore now. It's everywhere, right? That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
But there's a severe economic illiteracy, like for sure. You know, like that. I think that unfortunately probably does work on a lot of people, where they're like, that's very good. Oh, okay, and they.
But I also think. Go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say, even if you're illiterate, though, you can still lose confidence. And I think that's what's probably going to continue to take place is even the people that don't know anything about the monetary system are just going to get less and less confident and eventually going to have to wake up to something else.
That's a big, I think they use that as sort of like a way to, sort of exclude people from the financial system is like this like walled garden of, you don't know, like you don't know enough to participate.
It's a nomenclature cage that you cannot fucking penetrate unless you have an education that they approved of before you got it. It's insane.
Right. But now we're realizing no one has any idea. Like there's no adults in charge, right? It's like no one has any idea what's going on. So why is anyone insecure about their financial well-being when it's like these are the leaders of this is our bank telling us, well, we didn't print bills.
Yeah,
it's like
it up because okay, so this is a conservative politician previously was
he was the leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, he was leading
the Conservative Party maybe 5 years ago.
Party. So he's tweeting out all of these like actual statistics from the Bank of Canada and saying like they absolutely did inject cash into the economy. Here's the proof that it happened. And it basically, they bought up all the bonds because there was no demand for them on the open market. And you get people responding like, I believe the Bank of Canada.
Can you imagine tweeting that, like replying in that thread?
Like
for what?
There's so many, there's people being like, somebody else down there in the comment section was like, sir, you are not a qualified economist or something like that. And like the responses are like, every single economist said there would be no inflation, none. They expected no inflation whatsoever, with unprecedented amounts of cash injection into the economy. They all said there would be zero. It's unbelievable to me.
The bank is running this shell game, right? Where they basically tell you that they didn't print cash, which is true. They didn't print cash, but M1 and M2 is not just cash. And to quote another good Canadian podcast, the Looney Hour, not all money is cash, but all cash is money. And so when you put those things together, you can sort of play this sleight of hand where you can say, we printed bonds, whatever. To your point earlier about this like walled garden of terminology and processes that at the end of the day all just lead to number go up. But these guys can pretend all they want that it's some other mechanism and it's beyond your understanding. But trust me, we needed to do it, and don't worry about it. And we're gonna ease all the pain that Canadians are feeling with these 6 tweets about inflation. And you can read more in the thread if you want. It's unfucking believable. And by the way, for you Americans, or the Bank of Canada governor here, the equivalent to Powell in the States, spoke to labor leaders, union leaders, and business leaders, I think 3 weeks ago, Ben, I forget, and said basically, do not give your people raises to match inflation, because if you do, we're going to be in trouble. And I look at that and I think, okay, like I'm done with this guy. This guy, he cannot gain any additional support. And we have to do everything we can as Bitcoiners to stop this kind of stuff from continuing, because people are hurting, man. It may not be us, but certainly people are hurting in the current macro environment. And it's unfair that they're being lied to every single day by these people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super, super unfortunate. And it's even more unfortunate that people don't know where to direct their anger. Right. And so they see, well, this is the Bank of Canada and it says that this is happening. And, there's always a scapegoat, right? There's, it was this factor that was, we had no control over it. There's no way we could have seen this inflation coming. All of those typical things, or blaming it on, Putin or whatever it may be. It's just, it's very curious, if somebody's listening to this and you're thinking that I'm trying to explain away the actual reason for inflation, just ask yourself why inflation was already going up so much prior to anything that happened in Ukraine, right? It was already on that trajectory well before anything happened earlier this year. So, I don't know. I guess let's round this topic out. Joey, I'm gonna keep it with you then, and I'm gonna let you continue down your rabbit hole with your reason for being bullish. So I don't know what kind of a segue you had in mind, but it sounded like you were already kind of alluding to what you wanted to talk about.
This is a fine segue, Ben. I want to talk about the ESG narrative collapsing in front of us, specifically the E in the ESG narrative, and what it means for Bitcoin more broadly. Now, I'm gonna push back on a guest you had last week, Dennis Porter. He's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to go too hard on him. But I do have something to say about this carbon neutrality thing that continues to pop up, and I think he's a champion of, for better or worse. I would argue for worse. Let's talk a bit about the Eurozone energy crisis, okay? Germany and other European countries started shutting down nuclear plants just around the time Fukushima happened. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Angela Merkel moved on those nuclear plants in Germany about 3 days after Fukushima happened. So to pretend that this is anything but a political move for appearances, I think is incorrect and maybe uninformed. There's no way they could have known what the cause of that accident was and what the repercussions of that accident were that soon after they happened, or that soon after it happened. So I think this was a purely political move, which is something we'll continue to talk about here during my topic. And I think that it's obvious now that this was a problem and continues to be a problem, this sort of political for appearances action. Europeans this winter are going to have to choose. There's zero doubt about this. They're going to have to choose between heating their home and feeding their family. Right now, it's about €1,000 a megawatt hour. Ben, do you know what it costs for 1 megawatt hour right now in Ontario?
No, I don't.
It's about 130 Canadian dollars compared to 1,000 euros in Germany. Okay. So this idea that like things are not quite as bad, that Europe's winning the war, the sanctions are working, like you can turn on whatever 24-hour news network you want, whether it's CBC or MSNBC or whatever, they'll always pitch this to you, this sort of propagandized view of that war. This is a loss at the moment by almost any measure. This is, I think, going to expose ESG, green, and all this other nonsense as the luxury belief that it is. No one actually cares about these things. And when they're forced to choose between reliable, cheap, efficient energy and putting a sticker on their Yeti about whether or not they support ESG, the choice is going to become very obvious. I also think that this story that's kind of developing now, this morning, there was some talk about this, and I think earlier this week as well, about the European Union and G7 nations putting a cap on the price of Russian oil. This is a disaster waiting to happen. So you guys may or may not know this, listeners and viewers may or may not know this, but Russia at the moment is selling oil to China, who is selling oil back to Europe at a markup. Truly an incredible state of affairs as far as whether or not these sanctions are working. If we want to bring it back a little closer to home, as far as reliable energy and the repercussions of ignoring reliable energy, California banned or is trying to ease out internal combustion engine ICE vehicles by 2035. And today and yesterday, obviously, this story that's making headlines is the grid can't handle you charging your electric vehicle now. So unless you're either getting on a two-wheel or like the heel toe express to go to the grocery store, like you're fucking staying home, man. You can't go. Sorry about your luck. This insanity is only allowed because people don't have any understanding about how energy works. And we've talked about this on some other topics tonight about how the average person just doesn't have the bandwidth to digest all this stuff day to day, month to month, week to week, whatever. They can't figure it out. Partially because they don't have the time, but also partially because the sources they're used to using or they, are told they should be using are spinning them a yarn that's just so far from the truth that it's irrelevant to the actual situation at hand. I think that people are spending too much time in that regard, judging these ideas on their morality as opposed to their results. We talk about ethics and morality of saving the planet, this, that, the other, but the results really are what should matter. In real life, results matter more than what the intended consequences of the actions are, what the intended outcomes are, all these things that are sort of pie in the sky, intangible at the moment where you have to make the decision. It's very difficult to do this when you're faced with decisions about whether or not to spend money heating your house or feeding your family. And we're going to find that in Europe very shortly. I hope not in America and Canada, but you just never know. I would also say that the framing of these ideas is starting to be exposed. This idea that there's alternative energy to oil and gas. It's horseshit. It's fucking horseshit. There's no alternative energy, okay? You can put a hamster on a wheel and tell me that it's alternative energy because maybe it'll power a light. If I give that little guy some Adderall and some encouragement, he might be able to light up a small room in my home for 10 or 15 minutes. But chances are he's not going to be able to actually be an alternative to the reliable, cheap, and consistent energy that I see from oil and gas and from other petro products. The other thing I think that's going to come shortly, and we're kind of already seeing this already, is that, to your point, Chris, and I don't want to step on your toes if you're going to talk about nuclear, but nuclear is the obvious solution to this stuff. And it's really an IQ test of sorts for people who are all about green and renewables, right? Either you think that this little pellet the size of your finger or your thumb can heat your house for a year and it's more or less clean, more or less reliable, more or less safe, or you think that this thing is going to kill you and your neighbors and there's going to be some kind of nuclear war that breaks out because people are using this stuff as energy and it lends itself to weapons and all these things. To this end, I think at this stage, either, if you're against nuclear, to quote Doomberg, who I highly recommend paying for, I can't believe I'm saying that. It's the only Substack I pay for. To quote Doomberg, at this stage, if you're against nuclear, you're either victim of a propaganda campaign or you're an architect of that propaganda campaign. And there is no other option at this stage. This stuff is easily the savior we're looking for all over the world, and no one is talking about it, at least not at the moment, although that is changing little by little. Also note that ETFs, investing vehicles that were ESG a month ago, are now no longer ESG. It turns out that if you just put ESG on the title and still have Apple, Microsoft, and Raytheon in your portfolio, you may not actually be environmentally, socially, or governance-wise, really lending yourself to the mores of the day. The smartest people in the room are always making money off this stuff, but no one actually believes in it. Okay, this is a problem for me. And to Dennis's point last week about whether or not we should be embracing carbon neutrality for something that Bitcoin mining, adheres to, aspires to, pick your word there. I think it's just fucking wrong, man. And I get that you have to talk to politicians a certain way, but I think it's just fucking wrong. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to show you here. I'm going to read out this process that governments, investment houses, what have you, view as carbon neutral. And it's the reason I got the Big Tree Energy shirt on. And a friend of our show who's in the chat earlier talking about Europe needing Big Tree Energy for the winter. That's exactly why I got the fucking shirt on. I think it was Yochi Gamma or Narwhal Tacos. I forget who it was. But listen to this process. All across the U.S. Southeast, massive industrial feller bunchers, which are like tree, choppers, gatherers, like these big machines, are ruthlessly cutting down and stacking mature trees. The resulting logs are loaded onto trailers and hauled by diesel-powered trucks to wood pellet factories. Once they're there, the logs are milled, dried, and pressed through specialty extruders at high pressure, all of which require significant primary energy and raise local pollution issues. The resulting pellets are transported to coastal ports, again using diesel, where they are loaded onto cargo ships. The diesel-powered cargo ships make their way across the ocean, emitting CO2 along each of their several thousands of miles traveled. Once in Europe, the pellets are burned, emitting more CO2 per unit of heat generated than any other fuel source used at scale today, including coal, by a wide margin. That process, according to our lords and saviors, Larry Fink, etc., his ilk, governments, all that, that's carbon neutral. That's a carbon neutral process. You can fuck yourself on that, okay? And I would love to hear Dennis's rebuttal to this carbon neutrality shit, because if you think that this is carbon neutral, like this bridges that many people are going to be knocking on your door to try and sell you. The bridge salesman will be knocking your fucking door down if you think that this is a legitimate cause. These people that we're trying to appease have never done anything but try and kill the Bitcoin network, but try and kill your freedom, but try and kill your ability to garner wealth and build something for generations to come. They've never done anything but this. Why do we fucking care what they think? Are we really talking about currying favor in a system that we think is about to fail, to gain funding in a currency we think is worthless, to appease people we think are only going to move the goalposts? Are we really doing this? This is what it seems like we're doing in the mining space. And I would lump this mining council into this too, okay? We don't need these people. This always ends the same way, with a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of energy, and a new goal that we didn't know was coming because these people just don't want us to succeed and they'll do anything to make sure it doesn't happen. Don't lose sight of the prize here, man, because while we're talking about Bitcoin being energy efficient, central banks are gunning for us now, okay? There is no unicorn onesie wearing clown that Bitcoiners have to care about at the moment. Smart contracts don't matter. The merge doesn't matter. There is no war about, if you look back at like 2017, 18, 19, there was commentary and discussions about, well, Bitcoin can't scale. Well, now we got Lightning. Well, Bitcoin isn't going to work because it can't hold these imaginary cats that I'm breeding with people I don't know that are selling for 100 ETH during a bull market. Those are the enemies we had 5 years ago. Now the enemies we have, and I don't want to say enemies because I don't necessarily think these people are enemies, but like if you look at the quality of anti-Bitcoin commentary from guys like Mike Green, guys like Doomberg, guys like Grant Williams, guys like Eric Townsend, these guys are seasoned pros who've made a fortune in markets, understand markets. They think Bitcoin's got some shortcomings. I look at governments, same thing. Ben, you know better than anyone. The governments are coming for people who are embracing Bitcoin and trying to get out of the fiat system. We cannot be wasting our time with how much smoke is coming out of the stacks at a Bitcoin mining facility. We cannot be wasting our time with this, okay? we cannot be more concerned about the contents of a chimney than Santa Claus is. We cannot be doing these things at the moment, because right now the fight is really on. CBDCs are really coming. Governance is really increasing. Restrictions are really tightening up. Capital controls are really starting to show themselves. In Canada, $30,000 buy limits per year on any token, not, you know, BTC or Litecoin or whatever. And though you may not agree with buying those other tokens, the idea that it's not going to come towards Bitcoin, I think, is wrong and misinformed. And so I would just say, don't lose sight of the end goal here in favor of something that's trendy at the moment. And I just think that we've gone too far in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your tune of moving the goalposts, like as soon as you start saying, oh, well, it's green and it's actually cutting emissions and it's eating up waste energy and everything, then the goalpost, the immediate shift is, well, that energy could have been used for
always
like it's the opportunity cost argument comes. And again, from people who don't understand energy and the concept of, you can't just take energy from a hydro dam in rural China and port it over to charge your Tesla in New York City, right? Like that's not easily done. And there's going to be energy loss in that process. It's just not how energy works. So yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a shifting of goalposts. The beautiful thing about it is Bitcoin is kind of that reality check of how energy actually functions.
Yeah.
It kind of highlights the reality of the situation, and it, even in a dystopian hellscape where all of these things get banned in certain jurisdictions and they really come for everybody, it's a global phenomenon. And there's going to be jurisdictions that, you know, flip the bird and say, well, we'll mine it. And those ones will flourish. And then there's going to be, you know, a lot of neighboring countries and jurisdictions that are thinking, maybe I should get in on this. And so
it's true. You're spot on, Ben. You're absolutely spot on. The jurisdictional arbitrage is it's an important piece of this whole puzzle. And I hope you're right that countries, you know, I don't want to say that we need a first world country to do it, but I think it would be important if a first world country looked at this rationally and said, you know what, we're going to do this. We think it's a good idea. We want your brain power. We want your mining operations. We want all that stuff. We haven't seen it yet, but I think that we're coming to a flashpoint where first world countries are feeling pain now in a way they've never felt pain before. And so let's see what they do. Let's see how they act.
Mark or Chris, you want to dive in here? Any commentary on this?
Yeah, I mean, I got a few things. First of all, I'm so glad you brought up Doomberg, because a lot of the macro education side that I've kind of rabbit hole I've gone down has come from him. I think there's no better guy in the space. The stuff he puts out is incredible. I mean, it can definitely open your eyes, take you down in some ways, a dark but very obvious and realistic rabbit hole that does exist with it. You touched on, I never thought we'd be talking about this topic, so I'm pumped about it, because being able to get into uranium and also talk about, you know, what I'm going to be bullish on here in a few minutes, those two kind of go, they're side by side as far as the things I'm the most interested in. But I actually live within about 10 minutes of a nuclear reactor myself. And you start looking at, you know, the carbon deaths that go along with things like coal burning and things like that. And it's like you said, it's so obvious. And it's like, if you turn a blind eye and say, we're not going to do nuclear, you're right. You're part of the problem. And you obviously just don't understand. But my biggest concern with what's going on is we've done such a disservice when it comes to putting regulations up with mining companies. And I'm talking specifically with nuclear mining, uranium, that it's not like we can just flip on a switch. I mean, this is going to take years for them to play catch up. So what you talked about in Europe, I hope that's not what plays out. I hope it's a very warm winter over there, but I do have, you know, some hesitation of what is going to play out. And I don't think it's going to be pretty, but it's going to be a massive wake up call. And I expect you're seeing it already. Japan announced they're going to start turning reactors back on. Slowly but surely, you're seeing even U.S. facilities like in Illinois who said they're going to extend the life on reactors.
Oh, is that right? In US too? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think Illinois, they were going to close them down, and then last minute they decided to keep them open. And I believe that's even, there may even have been one in California that the same thing played out for. I'm not positive on that. But you look at like what China's doing, and China's building, 50 some odd reactors. The demand pull that's going to be created from all of this, they're years and years and years behind. With what's currently in service, they're behind. And now you're looking at probably doubling the fleet of reactors. And if that's your only option, and you've made it so difficult for mining companies to get permits and get things rolling, that's part of the reason why I'm positioned where I am, because I believe that the overshoot is going to be incredible. And, there's a ton of opportunity in it from an investment standpoint, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to play catch up when it comes to actual production. So that's where, it's one kind of a double-edged sword where like, yeah, there's an opportunity here, but are we really going to be able to make up the difference along the way without doing all kinds of these other nonsensical projects like burning logs from, my state? I literally see them rounding them up in South Carolina and taking them by truckload down to the ports. And it's like, it's happening right here. And people are just kind of blind to the reality of what's actually going on.
They call that biomass. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That sounds pretty green to me. I don't know, guys. Maybe we're wrong on this one.
That was my nickname in college, biomass.
It's funny though, like biomass is one thing, but then like I was gonna write a little bit thing here about like even corn based fuels, right? Like Europe, given the state of affairs there, Europe for a minute talked about the sort of the worthiness of corn based fuels during a season where they're almost assuredly going to have a shortage in that kind of food. Like I just, these people are unserious, man. They're either incompetent or intentionally burning the system down. And I hate to think the latter is true, but fuck me if it's not getting harder every day to argue against that position. It just seems to be almost impossible to be that stupid for this long. But here we are.
I wanted to, because we're on the nuclear discussion, I learned this about France when I was there. Did you guys know that France is, the energy that they produce is 70% nuclear? Okay. Yes. Now, did you know what happens with that energy? So they can't just use it. Yeah, they can't just use it in France because of certain regulations within the EU. They're forced to sell it externally and then buy other forms of energy from other surrounding countries to import. So they can't just they can't just be like, great, we're 70% nuclear. This is super efficient. Our emissions are super low. Great. No, they have to sell off nuclear energy to other jurisdictions nearby, and then they have to import other stuff. It's like, it's bonkers.
And people wonder why the Eurozone is so fucked. It's just, yeah. I do want to say though, like getting back to kind of the engaging in the ESG matrix. It's something we talk about a lot at the editorial with Bitcoin Magazine, where I do think there's something to be said about engaging, within their models to show that an open competition system, is more efficient within their own modeling than some coerced competition or coerced cooperation, right? And I think that there is a way to sort of fight and disprove the ESG narrative within their own modeling using Bitcoin as the sort of buyer and seller. Because I agree that it is sort of, it's like you're either the propaganders or the propagandees. And I think we're not trying to appease the propaganders. We're trying to help the entranced, And I think that there's something, sort of, important about being able to I agree. I don't think we really should care about the merge or stable coins or all this, except for the fact that, we can learn from the merge, hey, that's regulatory capture. Holy shit, the state just took over Ethereum. They fucked up on a super big consensus level. Holy shit, they're arresting, open source developers. Like there's stuff there to learn about what's going to happen with Bitcoin. And so engaging logically within those worlds, perhaps playing devil's advocate, but I think that there is something there that's powerful, just like making sure we remember why we're doing it. And it's not to appease the propaganders, but the people that are getting affected by it. Does that make sense?
I don't know, Mark. I don't know. You know, I don't know, man. I think like I guess I would ask you, and I'm not saying you're like a spokesman for this point of view, though. I think there are people who do have this. Yeah, there are people who do have this viewpoint. I would ask, when has this ever been successful? Would that be my next question? If you show me a time it's been successful, I'm happy to entertain that it may be successful here. But the fact of the matter is that generally speaking, this sort of thing has not been successful. And in fact, I would also say that if you start to play, you know, in another animal's cage, the likelihood that you make it out alive is very low. And so I would prefer not to do that if I could avoid it. And you know, I think
we're in the cage though. We're in the cage no matter what.
We're
not immune to propaganda and narratives, you know, like cheap energy has a lot of narratives, but also cheap energy isn't a narrative.
Well, right? I mean, there is some precedent for new things coming along that flew in the face of how things were currently done, and then taking like private option, right? Like you have things like electricity and vehicles where there were entrenched interests in some way, shape, or form. And I don't necessarily think it was through trying to appease that current system. It was just more of like the Uber approach of like standing there and doing this, and then the reality of how much better what you've introduced, it just gradually seeps out to regular people and they adopt it. So I don't know. I'm on the fence with this one. Like,
yeah, it's tough.
If there's somebody that's really stuck on it, but they have to be looking at it through that lens, but it's somebody that you know and you care about, then I don't know. Do you go that route of being like, well, looking through that lens, technically speaking, it's actually better than most industries in that realm? Or do you just say, listen, your entire frame that you're looking at this through is kind of horseshit, and we need to reevaluate how you're looking at it? I
just worry that we're over the target, you know, and the pressure is coming from a lot of different angles, and it's inviting, you know, quote unquote productive discussion with politicians and governments about Bitcoin's role in a existing system. I look at this and I think, you know, there may be some value in having these discussions if and only if you think that Bitcoin is going to destroy the system, regardless of what concessions you make. If you think that the concessions you make are immaterial to the eventual outcome, and that you can maybe, you know, ease the friction of adoption or ease the pain along the way from governments or regulators, maybe you do it. But I just don't think there's enough evidence to say at the moment that governments will pull the pin on a grenade they're holding and run to you to make sure that they take you down with them. It seems to me that that's the sort of, you know, MO of these guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely no arguments there. I think appeasing to the state is a losing and stupid effort, honestly. But again, I think that focusing back on the people entranced by the state, you know, not so much like, I don't think we should try to appease, you know, like the Paris Accord and that stuff. I think the Green New Deal was like kind of a, you know, like that was like a midterm election political technique. Like that bill had absolutely no chance of ever being a thing ever. Like, honestly, it just really didn't. That wasn't real. And then it blew up and became this narrative beyond what it ever was supposed to be. And now it's just so ridiculous. So I don't know. Yeah, it's tough. Like I definitely don't think we should be simping for states that have just proven in every way in COVID with lockdowns. It's like the state just like shut down the economy. Like the politicians destroyed local businesses, destroyed bodily autonomy, all this stuff. Like they did that. It wasn't the virus. The virus didn't do any of that. And, you know, I think we have a lot of reasons to be distrusting of the state, and we shouldn't appease them. Fuck them. But there's also a lot of lost people that are really smart that, like, you know, want to decrease the planet by a centigrade, and like maybe Bitcoin, it can do that for them somehow, and it's like the good, it's for you too, use it, you know. So
yeah, I think it's just a matter of like managing your energy though. You know, if you can pour into people who are willing to learn
Totally.
and are willing to have a critical conversation, because otherwise it'll just wear you down. You know, people at least have to meet you part of the way, even if it's 25% of the way there. But if you're constantly having to make the effort, then I don't think it's a worthy cause.
Totally.
And part of me thinks we're just going to be better served to address those people that are willing to learn and let the government sleep in the bed that they created. And when it burns down, it's going to be ugly, but it's going to allow something much better to be built in relatively short order, in my opinion.
I like the idea of planting seeds with people that are receptive to it. And it doesn't have to be like an all at once thing. It's just plant that idea. I mean, that happened to a whole bunch of people here in Canada earlier this year. It's a slow burn kind of thing, but when push came to shove and you get your bank account shut down and you have no way to transact, and donations are being cut off at every turn, and then all of a sudden one thing works, it makes you pay attention. And that's touch point number one for a lot of people. And there'll be more touch points, and they'll say, I remember that this actually worked and I got some money and I was able to survive a little bit longer.
A lot of good memes there, Ben, by the way. Slow burn, planting seeds, all good biomass memes. I appreciate you guys contributing to the cause there.
We're using their lexicon, you know.
How dare you? How dare you?
But I think, you know, there's going to be a lot of that. And yeah, to Chris's point, if they're willing to meet you just part of the way, again, you can have that first touch point with them where you bring it up. You don't have to push it too hard, and then they will encounter it again. That's not even a question. So just start. And but yeah, if somebody's like, no, I fully hate this thing, probably not worth your time, you know.
Yes, but I totally agree, but you know, we got to be selective of our energy. But like, man, again, is it not the easiest time ever to, you know, to show people a new way? It's just like any sector you want to look at, it's like
there's never been more opportunities to point to everything that's happening in clown world right now and be like, see, this thing, I told you.
I mean, people that you know, like totally towing like the MSNBC line are now like, whoa, what the fuck is this? This is insane. Like these, you know, like the wool is really, or the curtain or whatever metaphor, like the fabric hanging has totally been pulled aside, and it's just like, this is what's running the show, really. Like
everyone can see the wizard now for the first time, right?
Yeah. And he's naked. He's wearing no clothes. The wizard has no clothes. Yeah. That's like the best thing he's got going for him.
Well, let's I enjoy this chat. Let's continue down the line. Chris, I'm gonna let you segue into your reason. It sounds like we were kind of already starting into some of your thoughts there, so I'll let you continue. What did you want to dive down?
Yeah, so you guys touched on the willingness to take action a couple different times, and that's what I'm finding is as I've made this transition, I'll kind of tell a little backstory here in a few minutes, but I'm bullish on men taking action in their lives and stepping up. And I'm going to specifically talk about men because that's who I'm working with on a day-to-day basis, but I also think this is happening in female circles as well. But people trying to take back themselves, their self-belief, their health, and their families. And I think that's slowly but surely we're kind of seeing that play out. And let me kind of back up here for just a couple of minutes, and I'll explain kind of how I got to this point in my life. And so I went through the whole process of college and high school, that whole, you know, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You need to go get a degree. You need to do the right things. You know, went through, was able to be successful with all that, but like never felt like that was for me. Picked a career that I was interested in somewhat because I played a lot of sports growing up. And from there, picked physical therapy, got into physical therapy. At that point, I had a distraction and I had a purpose. I was racing Ironman on a pretty high level for a number of years. So that allowed me to pour all my energy into that. And I didn't really have to, I shouldn't say worry, but I was still kind of naive and blind to how broken the healthcare system was. And then at that point, I left Ironman for the right reasons. I got married and it was taking too much of my time and wanted to focus on my family, but it left a kind of a gaping hole in my life. And then everything that was negative in my career, all the student debt, all the things that I had accumulated over the years kind of came full circle. And I spent 3 or 4 years just in a very dark place, even when it comes to having our first child and just lack of presence, feeling very numb and just going through the motions, and just reached the point. Honestly, for me, COVID was the best thing that ever happened. It gave me an opportunity to reflect and take some time and realize that, I had been doing a bunch of self-education on the financial markets, and that's eventually how I found Sun Money. And from there, it was like, okay, like I can have an idea of how to take care of myself financially here, but I need to take back my health first, and I need to take back my mindset. And so those things eventually kind of led me to Twitter. I was off of social media for a long time and had kind of isolated myself, had a hard time having conversations. It's really hard to have conversations with people locally. In my perspective, to you get into some of these rabbit holes, and these people, they just want to talk about sports. They want to talk about going to the bar, how busy they are at work. And it was just all, bullshit to me. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. So I just was like, no, I'm going to continue to, do my own thing. And unfortunately, that just led to, like I said, isolation. So long story short, my brother was like, we got to do something with this. He was kind of in the same situation a few years behind me. And we just started connecting with guys on Twitter. And it was like this epiphany of, wow, there are other people that feel exactly the same way we do. And so we started talking to them, building relationships. We even had a little podcast going for a while. And it literally changed our lives, because we realized that we're not alone, that there are a ton of guys who are trying to do things bigger than themselves besides talk about sports and, how many beers they drink on the weekends and how much their wives annoy them. And it was, so at that point, it was just like game on, and kind of one thing led to another. And now, we're in the process of, we're building men, basically. We're creating men's groups, and we're working one-on-one, getting, we kind of trying to destroy the dad bod, as I like to say, is taking guys who think that their best days are behind them and calling bullshit on that, and trying to get them to level up. And it's the energy that I'm seeing, and the energy of the guys that I've been able to connect with. And, they're doing some similar things, and just trying to kind of call out all the nonsense in the system, and realize that it really starts with like the personal development side of things. So that's really what I'm very bullish on, is the energy that's being generated from that, the families that are being, I think that if we want to fix something, yes, we have to fix the money, no question. But we also have to fix the family, which they've worked really, really hard to destroy. And so if we can continue to kind of build those two things simultaneously, having men step up and not be afraid to lead their families because they actually believe in themselves again. And, going back to what you were talking about earlier too, about skills, we just go through the motions. We don't have purpose, and we don't develop any skills. And so that's kind of one of the narratives I'm trying to challenge too, is like, okay, you're calling yourself, you're saying, well, I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not a salesman, all these different things that they've convinced themselves are not true, or are true, I should say. And as a result, then we've got to kind of break those things down and change those self-deprecating thoughts into affirmations. And from there, you take guys that are in isolation, and they may not know what the hell they're trying to accomplish, but they know they're trying to accomplish something. And when you bring those type of people who are actually ready to take action together, and it's literally like life-changing stuff. I go into these men's groups, and even if I'm like kind of tired at night, I come out of there and it's like 11 p.m. and I want to go do some push-ups. Like I am jacked up, because you can just see these guys just lighting up, and it's just creating relationships, and that's affecting them on a personal level. It's going to affect their kids. And so it just has like generational impact. And so that's just what I've been really fired up about. This has only been a few months into this process. I actually got fired back in end of May. And I basically said, I'm never going back to this shit again. I'm going to do my own thing. And yeah, I've kind of never looked back. So that's what I'm bullish on. I think again, it starts with building ourselves, building our families, and then from there, you know, we can change communities and have a whole bunch of guys and a whole bunch of people just flipping the bird and saying, we're not going to play by your rules anymore. So,
unreal. You're gonna be a fucking star for sure. Listen, I am so with that, man. Like I do some work here in Hamilton, Ontario with a men's addiction center. And to your point, Chris, like the number of things that, you know, you think are insurmountable as a guy who's, you know, lived a pretty good life. Like I never had problems with addiction. My family's, you know, healthy, sort of, you know, what you would expect from a 2-parent home. The things you think are insurmountable, when you watch these guys who come from so much less than you, have so many more struggles than you, get together with a group of their peers, as you mentioned, and find out I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one going through this. I can lean on these people for support, and they'll lean on me for support. And that's empowering. And all those things together, you make a new man out of these guys. And that's what really builds communities. You send them back out into their neighborhoods, into their families, into their jobs. And, you know, you're sort of witnessing a transformation that you're fortunate to get to see, that not a lot of people get to experience in their lives. It's incredible stuff. I'm glad to hear you doing that where you are.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joey. It's something that, you know, we don't realize growing up in such a comfortable society, how we can still be so broken, if that makes any sense. And, you know, as a result, it's really hard for us, I think, as a species. We are so comfortable. You know, we're taught to seek comfort because that's the way we've evolved, is, you know, when it comes to things like food and Netflix and all these like cheap dopamine hits that we take, you know, day after day after day, there's really nothing telling us to try to push through to do something else. And it has to become like an intentional thing, because otherwise we just get complacent, and the level of anxiety and things like that, yeah, we may be able to pay the bills and put food on the table, but there's just an emptiness of going through the motions day after day.
Mm-hmm. I love this because I see more and more of it on like Bitcoin Twitter, because I think
damn right you do, Ben. Goddamn right you do.
And I don't know what the link is, whether it's people, like driven people are being attracted to Bitcoin, or Bitcoin is creating a drive within people. I think it's probably a little bit of both, depending on who you are. But I definitely know that a lot of people got into Bitcoin and were a little lost, and then, you know, found something they're super passionate about, but through that, found kind of, you know, communities of other people to interact with, where there is this kind of low time preference. Let's build ourselves and reclaim our health, reclaim our self-sovereignty, reclaim our, in some instances, masculinity, depending on whether you're talking about guys or girls. But regardless, there's this urge to improve upon oneself, when you're no longer subject to the nihilism brought on by the state. And I think it's a unique thing. Again, it's everybody's kind of journey through this is different. And it's not like there aren't missteps. God knows I've got my vices, and, you know, I'm already, I'd say one of my number one things is staying on a healthy diet. You know, I'm very easy to kind of deviate from that. And I genuinely think I have some sort of a sugar addiction, because, like, you know, there's times where I'm like, I need something sweet. I need like my awful Fiat can of Coke or whatever.
What's your vice, man? What's your big one? What do you like? If you're like craving a little sugar, 7 p.m., what are you getting? What are you grabbing?
I'm probably, if my daughter has some sort of like, you know, chocolate or something in the house, I'll grab some of that. Or because my wife, every once in a while, if we do have a beverage, she just, you know, goes for the simplistic, she'll grab like a rum and Coke or something, and I'll dive into those Coke cans and I'll start sucking them back, and it's horrible. And I you know, and I'll go on stints like where I'll go cold turkey and I'll just like swear it off. And once I'm kind of through that, you know, the initial like few days of awful pain, like getting off of that sugar, then I'm pretty good. But then as soon as you get like a taste of it, it's like right back into it. And I find it so difficult, but I want to better myself and get away from that. And I'm lucky enough that thus far, my metabolism has been good enough that it's never too horrible when I go down one of those paths. Like I notice it myself. I'm like, oh, the weight is no longer here. It's a little bit more centralized. So if I become too centralized, we'll say, then it's a problem. So I need to decentralize the weight in my body, and then I'll be happy. But yeah, the building of oneself, I think, comes hand in hand with kind of the circles that a lot of us interact with here in Bitcoin. And I love hearing about people bettering themselves, even just like not even referring to Bitcoin, but people that want to take the time to learn a new skill, to kick a bad habit, to spend more time with their families and building out those relationships. Those are such important things to focus on. And I think in fiat land, where you have a 9-to-5 job and you go there every single day, you come home, you slam a bunch of beer and you have a crappy fast food meal, and then you watch Netflix until you pass out, and then you hit repeat 5 days a week. I think it's nice to deviate from that and realize there's something more.
You're drowned in mediocrity in fiat land. It's everywhere. It's like this this constant cinder block tied around your ankle. You just can't, get above water. And like we talked about earlier with Bitcoiners, especially, there's not this crab bucket mentality, but God damn it, man, everywhere else, people will ask you, why do you get up at 5:30 in the morning for what? Like, you go to the gym every day for what? Like, you're not supposed to go every day. You can't recover. You literally got some guy whose waist size is a bigger number than his fucking IQ. And he's telling you that you can't go to the gym every morning because the recovery is not going to be okay. Like, okay, man, like, I appreciate the commentary, I guess, but I don't want to hear it. And 9-to-5 jobs, everyone who's had a 9-to-5 job knows this. There's always, much like Bitcoin Twitter, much like, a show like tonight, much like the communities you build in your your hometown, your neighborhood, there's always going to be a few people who are feeling the same way you are about that situation, about the way that those things are going. You know what I mean? You just got to find them. And it just takes one person to speak out and start the ball rolling downhill. And you're going to find that those things really gain traction very quickly.
Yeah. A couple of things that, Ben, you mentioned earlier, the idea of sovereignty. For me, this is just my belief on the side of like why Bitcoin ties into it, is I think that to some extent, yes, we need to fix the money side of it, but like that doesn't make you sovereign. Like Bitcoin alone doesn't make you sovereign if you're a diabetic at 40 years old and you're dependent on a broken healthcare system. So, I think that the healthcare side of it and taking control of that yourself, and then taking control of your family, like you can't have it all just because you have a bunch of Bitcoin. So that's one of the things that, as I got more of that financial education, I just realized, like, okay, even if I have this piece of it, like my life's not perfect and my life's not better because I don't have this, and this in place. I've got to be able to be a more well-rounded individual, aside from just, feeling like financially I'm doing the things that I need to do. And then, Joey, I think in terms of, you mentioned there are people, but I think unfortunately, some people's tribes are just pretty shitty. They're just hanging out with the wrong people. Their inputs that they're getting on a consistent basis are either at the same level as them or less than them. And it's, you have to be intentional about taking a step back and searching those people out. And that might be something as simple as cleansing your Twitter, like going through your Twitter and taking out any negative person you have and start following a bunch of positive people that you resonate with their message. I think that's, taking an inventory of our inputs is a huge part of it as well. And being able to replace some of those negative inputs with more positive things, even if it's just one or two things to get started with.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, no, for sure. Like Bitcoin is a means to an end. And like, I think if you use it to create like purpose, which leads to optimism, which leads to the actual energy to actually fucking make a change,
Totally.
Like, you sort of need that. Like, you need that hope. And I think Bitcoin, like, just very specifically as a tool, sort of like builds that. I mean, I can speak for myself. Like, you know, I was working in the bar world, and you know, was around alcohol a ton, and was just drinking a shit ton all the time. And you know, it was bring your 8-ball to work day, you know, 4 days a week, and just like we were just going for it. And you know, there's definitely not a surprise that I'm like 4 years not drinking, and I've been in Bitcoin like very, very seriously now for like, you know, bear market 2018, right? It's like that sort of adds up. It you know, instead of like, you know, running into the bathroom and doing bumps or whatever, I would go buy dips and do things like that. And I had this like whole other mechanism and this purpose and this thing to learn about and all this other shit. And then just in talking with the community and in, you know, I found so many other bartenders that were dealing with that exact same thing, where they were like, oh shit, I wanted to not drink when I went to work today, and fuck, now I'm 6 tequila shots deep and someone put a bag in my pocket, right? Not sorry to keep talking about drugs, but I like to be real. And I love this, like, yeah, like Bitcoin, there's a lot of ways Bitcoin can go to 100 million bajillion dollars and the world is a much worse place. Like, that is an absolute possible reality. I don't think it's likely. Like, I really trust Bitcoin's incentives, but it's possible, you know? And so how can you make a change, you know, that you want to see? You know, how can we get to this end that we want? Maybe Bitcoin isn't the only means to get to a stronger family, stronger society, stronger men, stronger women, you know, just stronger people. I think that's really cool. So yeah, man, hey, optimistic, powerful stuff. I like it.
Mark, I was in a space earlier. We were talking about like difficult orange pill conversations we've had. And we were talking about, you know, being the guy at the dinner party who talks about inflation and, you know, maybe talking to your wife in a car ride about the nature of the Federal Reserve. But I didn't hear anyone talk about bringing their phone into a washroom to buy a dip while everyone else is doing lines off the toilet. Now that would be a tough conversation to have. I don't know how you start. That's a tough one.
Welcome to the Bay Area in 2018. That was more or less the scene. No, yeah. Good times.
Good on you, buddy. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but really, I loved your point, Joey, about, you know, just no matter what you're kind of going through, there is someone else going, you know, it's like we're, you know, as unique as we all are, as snowflakes as we all are, you know, we're also, there's a lot of commonality in this world. And when we focus so much on the division, and it just fucking sucks. So totally. Yeah, it makes it hard to get to like, you know, share vulnerable shit and whatever. But whenever you do, you know, I mean, honestly, man, Chris, I think it's like, that's fucking cool. And I think some people would be like, wow, you're doing men's groups? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? But to me, it's like, yeah, dude, we need that shit. We need it bad.
100%.
Like, guys are hurting. Everyone's hurting. Women are hurting. Everyone. It's
in our DNA. I mean, like, we're not meant to be isolated with our phones and having very superficial conversations. Like, we're meant to be, you know, in community together, you know, doing, especially when it comes to, I'll go off on a little tangent here, but when it comes to men, we tend to feel like our only purpose is to provide for our families monetarily. And unfortunately, you know, that creates this rat race effect of lack of purpose. And I think, Mark, you mentioned that is purpose is everything. You know, when you find purpose, there's hope and there's a reason for you to keep going. And if for nothing else, to bring people together, to have them start thinking about what their purpose actually is, so they can kind of start unpacking that, figuring out how to believe in themselves again, and maybe take some actionable steps towards something else. If they really hate what they're doing and hate the position that they're in, there's no reason we can't, you know, take a risk. And I guess I'll just briefly touch on the idea of risk and how we've like made it such a negative thing. But like, we need to risk and we need to fail. And those are two things that more of us we all need to do on a consistent basis, as far as I'm concerned. And if we push those two things, I mean, I think you'll be amazed at, you know, what you can do in a very short period of time just by leaning into that.
I think people misplace like the blame on capitalism when it's like, no, taking a risk is like a very natural thing that animals do, we do. It's a very natural biological thing to like, maybe I'm going to spend this time to make a tool to get an agricultural surplus to then trade. So this monkey picks things off my head or whatever. Like, I don't know. That's not my field, but Yeah.
It's not.
Anyway.
It's not.
No. Despite my bushman look, no, it's not.
It is true. You know, there's nothing more rewarding than taking a risk, because that, you know, if you want to talk about dopamine, taking a risk is dopamine, whether it's, you know, what you consider to be maybe a risky Bitcoin investment the first time, whether it's approaching a girl at a party, or whether it's, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you, the best stories always come from times you took a risk. And stories may just seem like stories at the time, but what they really are learning experiences. And that's how you grow as an individual, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can, I mean, each risk that you take, you learn from it and you build upon it. So, you know, calculated smart risk as well plays into this, right? You know, you're not going to just jump off a bridge because it's a risk. Like you're taking risks so that you can grow. And if it doesn't work, then you can go back, examine the situation, and then, you know, next time try something different. And I mean, I've, in terms of just, again, like a story of personal risk, I was kind of scared of not having a boss for a while. As much as I hated having a boss, the thought of the comfort of, oh, well, I have a job and I get a specific salary every couple of weeks or month or whatever it may be. And that's a comfort thing for a lot of people. And then I'm thinking, oh man, how risky is it to kind of go it alone and not have that blanket of, oh, you know, I'm going to be okay. These other people will take care of me as long as I keep on showing up. But the reality of taking those risks is it makes you a lot more anti-fragile if you learn and grow from it. Right. I'm looking at it now, like previously, I guess, in having a job with a boss, it was effectively a single point of failure. Right? Like if I lose that job or the company doesn't do as well and they have to let me go for whatever reason, then, you know, the entirety of my income is wiped out. Whereas now, if, you know, I have different streams of revenue, and when I look at that, it's like, oh, if one of those doesn't work out, then what, I'm dealing with like a temporary, you know, stoppage of maybe 1/8 of my income. And that's much more manageable. It's much less panic inducing. And it just takes a little bit of work to get that stream of revenue back up and going. And I'm much better off. So I'm actually, what a lot of people perceive as risky ends up putting you in a position of much less risk, as long as you learn from it.
Totally. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, man. Well said.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is you talked about like being able to reflect. You know, when you take risks and you get that honest feedback, you can reflect on what it's done for you and how to make those adjustments and whatnot. So yeah, this is a topic I absolutely love, is getting into the risk failure stuff. So
yeah,
a great topic. That was a great topic, Chris. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great reason to be bullish. Great reason to be bullish.
Well, gentlemen, I think I got to start rounding it up here. I've got a bit of a trek ahead of me. I'm spending the weekend with the family since I was away for a week. So first off, I'm going to thank all of you for being here, but I like to round it up a certain way. I usually do a quick round around the group, and I ask a couple things. Of course, where can people find you? Any final thoughts that you may have. But then I'm going to put a challenge to you, and I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you guys to recommend something, whether it be like a piece of content. It could be a book, an article, a video, something to watch. Maybe it's an application that you tried out that you really liked. Maybe it can literally be anything, a hardware device that you tried out. It could be specifically Bitcoin related, or it can be, you know, we kind of covered a wide array of tangential topics. So anything that you found to be useful in your life, I'm going to let you guys recommend it. So I'll start off with final thoughts. I mean, we really covered the gamut, and I think the unique thing here is that Bitcoin is a jumping off point for a lot of different interesting ways to build upon yourself. Yes, we want to fix the money and fix the world, but with that, we also want to fix ourselves, right? And what the world has done to ourselves, and that's in my opinion, a pretty unique perspective in a world that is full of nihilism that has been brought on by kind of our surroundings. So I love that aspect of Bitcoin. I love that aspect of Bitcoiners and kind of the hopefulness of the future and the willingness to do something about it, both globally, but very locally within oneself and one's family. So, and in terms of, I guess, since we're on the topic of improving oneself, there's a book that I really enjoyed. And I'm sure some of you here have read it, if not all of you, but it's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I quite enjoy that book, just in the sense of it. The title sounds a lot like it's going to be a deceptive book, like teaching you how to force people to do something you want to without them really understanding it. But really, it just kind of covers the idea of showing genuine care for what one has to say and what one is going through and how they're living their life, and actually asking questions of them and getting to know them so that you can understand them better, so that you can find common ground. And I think that's a lost art, especially in the context of spending 2 to 2.5 years not interacting on a personal level with pretty much anyone. I think it's a good idea to reacquaint yourself with interacting with people and learning about them. And while I do think Bitcoiners are on the right track, I also think that, myself included, we can go down rabbit holes where and down paths where we completely dismiss people rather than trying to understand how they arrived at their current mindset. So I think spending more time on that is worthwhile. So if you haven't read How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think it's worth your time. I also maybe check out one of the earlier versions, because I love when he's referring to like Abraham Lincoln as some of his references. Yeah, worth a read. Check it out. But I'll rotate. Let's jump to Mark. Where can people find you?
Yeah.
Final thoughts and a recommendation.
Yeah, totally. Mark Goodwin. You can find me on Twitter at that little thing right there, and website if you just put a dot instead of the underscore. I work on the editorial at Bitcoin Magazine, on the print magazine. Definitely subscribe and check us out. We have a ridiculous magazine about to come out that's gonna fucking piss off half the world and really stoke up the other half. So that's what we try to do. We're a bipartisan platform, of course. But yeah, totally check out Bitcoin Magazine. Super thankful to be here. Chris, you're amazing. Joey, super hilarious, awesome. Ben, as always, big fan. This is great. I would say I'm gonna just go with like what's at hand's reach, because I wasn't prepared for it, but I have Grokking Bitcoin here, and I have it bookmarked to the transaction chapter. And I think learning about how a Bitcoin transaction works on a very technical level, like, really explains how Bitcoin works. Like, you learn about the UTXO set and propagation, and really good place to go. There's some really cool stuff out there on that. Yeah, Grokking Bitcoin, though, probably one of my favorite Bitcoin education books. Big fan of it, by Kaye Rosenbaum. Closing thoughts. Yeah, every time I get to talk to Bitcoiners, it just makes me more excited about it. Smart people, good hearts, fucking stoked. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Love it. Joey, you're up.
Well, I gotta piss like a racehorse. So you can find me at JoeyTweets, Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. I have one recommendation only. Speak in the Twitter space. You might be shy, but I guarantee you will be better off if you speak and let your ideas be known. Those criticisms may be harsh, but you'll absolutely be better for it. So, Ben, thanks again for having me, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, no worries, man. And Chris, you're up last. Final thoughts. Where can people find you? Recommendations? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just changed my little handle on there. It's underneath at Chris Boettcher 9. And yeah, I'm primarily on Twitter right now. We are, if you guys are interested in the things I was talking about earlier, leveling up and taking control of your health, your mindset. We're doing some one-on-one coaching, as well as our next men's group will start in October. So you can reach out by DMs if that was something you're interested in. I would say my challenge for you guys is, I think it all starts with understanding who we are and figuring out our own thoughts, regardless of what your goals are. That could be nutrition, health, whatever it is spending 20 minutes with a pen and a paper in silence first thing in the morning. Do it for a week. I think it'll start changing your life. We can talk about the things you're struggling with, the things you're dreaming about doing, maybe, just discovering what your purpose might be. I think there's extreme power in that. And I think that's where everybody should start, is just being in silence, you and your thoughts. And you might not look like what you see right away, but over the course of unpacking that stuff, I think there's a lot that can be accomplished.
Awesome. I love it, man. Great. Well, everybody, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate all your time. This is a great chat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you're all welcome back anytime.
Appreciate it, Ben.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, fellas.
All right. And everybody watching, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you follow all of those gentlemen. All of their Twitter handles are actually linked in the show notes down below. So give that a click and share the show far and wide. Of course, again, like, subscribe, share, all those things really, really help. You can also, if you want to help this show in another way, you can hit up the previously mentioned sponsors down below. Those were CoinKite, Shakepay, LEDN, Bitrefill, BillFodl. They're all down here. And if you really liked what you saw, you can always drop me a Bitcoin tip at my Strike page, strike.me/BTC sessions. Go there and type in any amount you like. Hit the tip button. You'll see a Lightning invoice, or if you tap the arrow to the right, a regular Bitcoin QR code. With that, I'm out. Have yourselves a wonderful day or evening, and I will see you guys next time for your daily session.
HODL the Bitcoin.